Welcome to Beyond the Next Chapter. I am your host, Whitney Clark. In case you didn't know, I love Arizona. Maybe you love Arizona. And if you don't love Arizona, you are going to fall in love with the state by the end of this episode. I'm joined today by Roger Naylor, who loves Arizona more than anyone I know. He's an award-winning travel writer and author who says he's been, quote, swooning in love with State 48 since he arrived here as a college student. Roger's work has appeared in the Arizona Republic, USA Today, and dozens of other publications. He's written several books covering everything from Arizona state parks to the best hiking trails, and he's out with a new book called Arizona National Parks and Monuments. So, Roger, thank you so much for being here.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to get to sit and chat with you for a little while.
Of course. And what better thing to talk about than Arizona's national parks and monuments? Tell folks what they can expect in your new book.
Well, this is the guide that you want. I wanted to create a comprehensive guide of our 34 national park units because I think a lot of people probably don't know how many national parks that we actually have. We have 3 full-fledged national parks. We have 19 national monuments, which is more than any other state. But then we also have national historic trails, national historic sites, national heritage areas, national recreation areas, so forth and so on. I give you all the designations. It doesn't matter what each park is labeled. These are our crown jewels. They are our special places, and they're right here in our backyard. And I just want Arizona folks to get out and discover them and explore them, see them. And, you know, I kind of wanted to demystify the whole national park experience a little bit because I think sometimes we have that sense of, well, it's a national park. We'll need a couple of vacation days or a long weekend or something. And that's certainly true in some cases if you want it to be. But at the same time, so many of these parks are just great day trips. Mm-hmm. Just, you know, and they're so close, so convenient. What's stopping you? Go visit.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a big production.
It does not.
Especially with some of these historical sites. What are some of the ones you can think of? I mean, everybody knows the Grand Canyon. I mean, it's internationally famous. You go there, you hear people speaking languages from all over the world. What are some of sort of the smaller areas that people might be learning about for the first time?
Well, a lot of the historic sites, as you mentioned. One of my favorites, and I think it's probably our least visited national park, is Fort Bowie National Historic Site. It's a gorgeous little spot. It's very unique because it is our only hike-in national park. You have to actually hike 1.5 miles to reach the ruins of the old fort. This was a significant fort on the Arizona frontier where there was this big crossroads of conflict. So much of our history unfolded along the frontier because of right in this area. And this is where our America's longest war was sparked. And it gives you all that information as you're hiking in. That's one of the fun things about it because the 1.5 miles, it's an easy trail, but it's an interpretive trail. So there's signage along the way pointing out each of these sites, and you're passing along the ruins of the old stage station. You're passing the post cemetery. You're passing, battle sites, and of course you come across Apache Spring, because if you're wondering why all this took place in this very isolated area, the answer to almost any question in Arizona is always water. There's water here, so that's what brought everyone and stuff. And then you reach the ruins of the old fort, and it's just such amazing stories that unfold there. So it's just a really a joy to get to experience, and perfect time to go now too. But any of those the parks, I think Wapatki National Monument, which is about to celebrate a centennial. It's coming up on its 100 years as a national monument in December of 2024. So. But it's a very special kind of place because I think so many of the ancient stone villages, the old pueblos built by the ancestors of the Hopis and the Pueblo people, are tucked away in cliffs and little alcoves and everything. And the Wapatki dwellings are out in the open. They're on these grassy plains. They rise like these red bone ghosts above the grasslands and look like natural formations. They're very haunting, very spectacular and stuff. So again, just another really unusual place to visit, a little north of Flagstaff there. It's connected to Sunset Crater Volcano National Monument, so you get two national monuments. But it's not just by proximity that they're related. It's that they very much tell the story for each other, because it was due to the eruption of that volcano in 1085 that land where Wapatki is became kind of arable. The volcanic ash and cinders that came kind of helped to fertilize the soil, provided a little mulch to keep in moisture. So all of a sudden, cultures kind of moved in the ensuing years and lived there, farmed there for many decades before moving on again.
In the process of writing this book, what did you learn that you had not known before? And were any of these places locations you had actually never been?
Well, the only place I think I had not been was Grand Canyon Parashant National Monument, which is the most remote location in the lower 48 states. It's a park that I discourage anyone from going to. Do not go there. I tell you that in the book. Do not go there unless you are absolutely and completely prepared as best you can. This place will eat your tires. It will snap your axles. It will leave you stranded. It's 50 miles of dirt road just to reach the monument, and every road within its confines within its million acres is four-wheel drive. And so you have to be prepared with spare tires, preferably more than one. You have to carry extra gas. You have to be able to self-rescue. Because if you're stranded out here, a tow job will cost literally thousands.
Wow.
So, but for a lot of people, that's an adventure. I mean, it's so far off the grid takes it personally. It is, remote and gorgeous. And to me, it's important that we have these kind of places. Even if I don't get back there more than once or twice, just knowing that dark skies and wide open spaces still have value, and I'm glad that it's being protected. So that one was so isolated, I never gotten a chance to go to. But when I was writing the book, a buddy and I, who has four-wheel drive and is an experienced Jeep driver, we went out and had a wonderful adventure there. So that's the only one I hadn't visited. As far as learning new stuff, every park I investigated, there's always more things to learn, new chapters of history, new details that I hadn't known. So it was just fascinating. One little fact that I was unaware of and about Parashant, as a matter of fact, is that was the home of our only wild alligator for many decades. There was a rancher way out there in the middle of nowhere, and some of his buddies gave him a foot-long alligator as a birthday gift one year, and he turned it loose in one of his ponds there in northern Arizona. Now, an alligator's used to warm swamp weather, but the alligator somehow survived for 20+ years or whatever. And when he sold the ranch to the National Park Service to become part of the monument, part of the stipulation is that you got to rescue Clem. You can no harm can befall him. So they caught this alligator. It was 8 feet long, like 130 pounds, just a little rail of an alligator. Transported him down to the Herpetologic Society in Phoenix, and I think he's still with us. He's now about 600 pounds still, and hisses and growls at everyone. He's known for his bad temper, but I don't blame him. He had pretty much of a hard life. Yeah. So, but anyway, of all the perils that you can encounter in Parashant, at least you won't get eaten by an alligator now. So one less thing to worry about.
You might have a tire that goes flat, but it's not going to be because of an alligator.
Exactly.
And did you guys have any flat tires or anything? Or
no, we did not.
Okay.
We got through just fine. But again, and I encourage in the book very specifically, always in that location, always get the current up-to-date locations from the rangers. And it was a good idea because one of the roads we were planning on taking had been recently washed out and stuff. So that's the kind of information you want to go in there with beforehand and stuff.
When did you first really fall in love with Arizona?
Oh, it was love at first sight. I mean, literally, I stepped off the plane in Flagstaff, smelled that pine-scented air, gazed up at the outline of the San Francisco peaks, and I knew I was home. That was it. It was 50 years ago. The book comes out just in time to help me celebrate my 50 years, half a century of being
That's
in love with
amazing.
the state. Yeah, no, it was a no doubt situation. It was it was like a romance comedy, where you're just starstruck. I'm going, oh, this is it. This is going to be my home, and unfortunately for my college career, because I was Dean's List the first semester. By the second semester, I was on academic probation.
Oh,
Because by then I'd kind of stopped going to class, and I was just rambling around Arizona and discovering I could hitchhike out to the Grand Canyon. And so class seemed to be important to me. But kids, stay in school, please. And
you can still be a published author.
And still, even without. So but that's became my education. I replaced my the formal education as I spent those next few years just rambling around Arizona and kind of doing what I do now, but at least now I get paid for it, so it's more fun.
And not hitchhiking.
Yeah.
No. So did you hitchhike from Ohio to the Grand Canyon?
I did I used to hitchhike from Flagstaff to the Grand Canyon a lot.
Okay.
But, during the late 70s, I would go back to Ohio when I was out of money, work for a while, because I could always do landscaping work, and I had a little business, mow yards and stuff. Once I had money saved up, and I'd hitchhike back out to Arizona and just ramble around. Sometimes I had an old beat-up car, but, for 4 or 5 years, that was the cycle and stuff. So,
What ultimately got you to move here? When were you able to actually move here full time?
Full time. My wife and I moved out about 30 years ago.
Okay.
Full time. Once kind of the internet changed everything, technology and stuff, because where I could email stories. I was a writer at the time, and I kind of needed to be in a larger market. And once I could exist anywhere, I could freelance from anywhere, then we packed up and moved out to Cottonwood and in the middle of nowhere. And so I'm firing off stories to magazines and newspapers around the country now, and did that for I wrote for a lot of alternative newspapers, magazines, did a lot of humor and pop culture, politics. Kind of ran the gamut on columns and stories and things for about 10 years. But in the meanwhile, then I was living such a great life in Arizona that I thought, this is what I want to write about. And so I started, I submitted a few things to Arizona Highways. Pretty soon I was writing for Arizona Highways. Then I was writing for the Arizona Republic and for the Arizona Visitor Guide and so on. And all of a sudden I became just a full-time freelance Arizona travel writer, and that's what I've been doing for the last 22 years or so.
I love the story in your book about your connection to the Chiricahua National Monument, because you went there with your wife on your honeymoon, correct?
Yeah, we got married in Ohio and flew out to Arizona because I told her this is where we're going to live. And the first place I took her hiking was Chiricahua National Monument, because it was a place that's so special to me. And I thought she needed to see this. And if she doesn't get this place, if she doesn't understand this place, we're dividing up the wedding presents. We're going our separate ways, because that's irreconcilable differences. Fortunately, she loved it and said, "Oh, this is beautiful." She understood, because it is just a magnificent place, but it's a very unusual place. It's not the kind of traditional beauty. It's very haunting, and it just stays with you. And so we got off on a good foot there. So.
And you saw your first rattlesnake there.
I did. A long time ago. This was one of the first times I was hiking there with a buddy, and this rattle came from under a little scrub brush, and man, we ran over towards it because we're young and idiots. I mean, we didn't get that close, but I was seeing a rattlesnake in the wild the first time. I've probably seen 100 or so since, and but it's always exciting. It's I like seeing my neighbors. I like being out in wild places, and man, I've seen a lot of them in Chiricahua. The place is loaded with them.
I saw one there as well. We won't let that deter you from going to visit, but I always like the analogy of they've probably, a lot more rattlesnakes have seen you.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just about obviously being respectful and mindful, and we share the desert with so many creatures.
Exactly. Keep a safe distance. There's been many times, in fact, one in Chiricahua, I remember, where walking along the trail and I kind of glance over, oh, there's a rattlesnake. Because their first instinct will always be there. They want to they lie still and flat and quiet. They don't want to be seen. They're a predator, but we're a much bigger predator. So the only time they rattle is if they feel like you're getting too close, and it's not a threat, it's a warning. Oh, by the way, I'm here. Don't get too close. So they're giving you that chance to back up. As long as you don't put your hands or feet someplace you can't see them, you're really not in any danger.
And the Chiricahuas are so just sort of otherworldly in terms of the rock formations. If someone has never, a lot of people have never been there that have lived here for a long time. It's kind of out there, sort of, if you're in southern Arizona. What would your recommendation be for someone who's maybe never been there? They want to check it out, what would be your first recommendation?
Well, they have a scenic drive. There's one road that enters the park. It's south of Wilcox, kind of almost on the New Mexico border in Cochise County. It's the result of an old volcanic event about 25 million years ago where this fountains of lava and ash that came back down formed a crust of rhyolite, and those have been eroded into these really fanciful shapes. So there's hoodoos and towers and columns and faces. It's like a skyline of wilted castles. It's just really gorgeous. They've got about 17 miles of hiking trails, so I always recommend hiking, but they do have a scenic drive that takes you right up through the heart of it, so you get some nice views. It takes you up to the top of a mountain. You have wonderful views of the rock formations and stuff. And then there are several little short trails that you can experience. Most of them are interconnected loops, so you can keep it kind of short. If you're a good hiker, if you can do it, the Heart of Rocks is the very best. But the shortest route to get there would take you about 7.3 miles. So it's a good hike, but it is so spectacular and worthwhile seeing. But you take the scenic drive. They also have some historic buildings, including the old Faraway Ranch house, and they're down in the meadow below the visitor center and connected by easy pathways and a picnic area, so you can explore that area as well.
Great. It's so gorgeous, and just southern Arizona, I feel like sometimes doesn't get enough credit, I suppose. I mean, there's so many. Northern Arizona is beautiful, southern Arizona is beautiful, and I don't have the numbers, but I know that Chiricahuas is like one of the least visited.
It is.
At least compared to the Grand Canyon.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
It's always nice when you go there because you're not fighting off crowds.
You are not, and that's one of the reasons I always tout it. I always promote it again because you have to seek it out. It's not on the way to anywhere. You have to actually go there. And it's never overrun. It may have become our fourth national park. There's been legislation in front of Congress. To become a national park requires an act of Congress. National monuments can be created by presidential decree. So there's been a big push to make Chiricahua as our fourth national park. I always say if it were in any other state, it would be featured on their license plate.
For sure.
It's so remarkable, such a land of remarkable beauty as the Sky Island. So there's incredible bird life, wildlife. This was the home of the Chiricahua Apaches. So there's, a wonderful history throughout the region. So it's really a worthwhile place to visit. But no, you're absolutely right about, southern Arizona sometimes gets overlooked, especially by folks who live in the Valley of the Sun. I think because you're always thinking of, let's head north. Let's cool off and head north, and certainly understandable. But a lot of those parks down in southern Arizona do get overlooked and are lesser visited than some of the other ones. Our most visited park, and most people would think it's the Grand Canyon, but it's actually Lake Mead Recreation Area. More than 1 million people visited Lake Mead last year than made it to the Grand Canyon. Second is Glen Canyon Recreation with Lake Powell. We're water lovers. We want that water. And then third is Grand Canyon.
I was just kind of looking at your book because you sort of break it up into area of the state, which is really nice. Right. Tumacacori is also such a cool little park too. That's so beautiful, and that's definitely something you can do if you're just driving from Tucson down to southern Arizona. I mean, it's a stop off the freeway. It
is, and it is a remarkable, again, that chapter of history of the Spanish culture. Father Kino established the mission back in 1691. And the old adobe church that still stands there they started building that in 1800, and is right on the Santa Cruz River, which is why he was traveling that route. But yeah, so much of that whole chapter of the history, long before Arizona was a state, long before Anglo, other Europeans had arrived. This was New Spain. This was the frontier of that, and it's just a really interesting to learn. It was Father Kino who introduced the native people to crops like winter wheat and peach trees and apricot fig trees, taught them to graze livestock and stuff. So it really changed the economic and agricultural fortunes of southern Arizona and stuff. So I think one of the historians down in Tucson made the point that if you've ever eaten a beef burrito, it was thanks to Father Kino there and stuff. So,
and there's a lot of things named after him too. And if you're in the Tucson area, I lived there for a while, and you see the Kino a lot. I also really like Tuesday Goot, mostly because I like saying Tuesday Goot. It's a fun one to say. And that one is like sort of outside of Jerome, correct? Because I went there when I went to Jerome for a day, so we were able to go to Tuesday Goot and Montezuma, I think, in one pass.
It's actually in Clarkdale,
okay.
Just down the road from my house. That's my local national monument. I've got a national monument in my backyard. And it's Tuesday Goot is an Apache word that means crooked water because it crowns a hill above the Verde River, above an oxbow of the Verde River, a big curve there. And it's a really fascinating place. Again, one of those small. You'll spend a couple of hours there. You get to walk around and see the ruins. They've got some nice little trails overlooking the Verde River and the Devashi Marsh down there, and it's a chance to learn about the Sinawa people who were living here and building these places 700 to 800 years ago. And it is the same group, the Sinawas, that built Montezuma Castle, which is a very different look since Montezuma Castle is tucked away in a cliff alcove 100 feet above the valley floor, whereas Tuesday Goot's are more spread along a hillside and stuff. So it gives you a chance to see how these very resourceful people survived because they used what was available to them. They used the local material, they used the local geography and stuff. And if you pay admission for Tuesday Goot, you can visit Montezuma Castle. Within the next week, it's free. But of course, everybody should have a national park pass anyway. I mean, that's just. I can't believe someone would live in Arizona and not have a national park pass because it's such a bargain and it just opens up just a world of adventures.
What is the price range for that?
For a young person like you, it would probably be, I think it's $80 a year for a family, and that gets your whole family in. But if you're military or retired veteran, family of veterans, free. If you have a disability, it's free. If you're a geezer like me, if you're an old person, 62 or above, it's $20 a year or $80 lifetime.
Wow.
I plunked down $80 like 5 years ago, and and I've got a lifetime pass to national parks, and it covers not just national parks but also a lot of the national forest locations. If your Tonto recreation area, that covers that. A lot of the Red Rock passes and Sedona stuff. National park pass is all you need, so it covers a whole bunch of other things as well, and it just makes it easy, because the Grand Canyon is such an epic adventure. It's the kind of thing people feel like, well, we absolutely, need some time to go visit. And you sure do. You can be there for a month and barely scratch the surface. But at the same time, I would much rather visit over and over and over again. Just last month, I did this just in October, something I try to do every year. I get up early in the morning from my Cottonwood home. I drive to the Grand Canyon. This time I hiked down the South Kaibab Trail 3 miles to Skeleton Point, which is a favorite spot of mine. There's a little rock ledge there that I like, shaded by a pinon pine overlooking the inner canyon. And I ate a little snack. I had a little lunch. I hiked back out, and I drove home. And I was home in time for dinner and to sleep in my own bed. And the reason I do that is because I can, because that's a privilege of living in Arizona. That's a perk that's granted only to us. I always want to remind myself of what a gift that is to here. The next time I go to the Grand Canyon, and I'll do something different. It's so I don't try to experience everything all at once. I just try to go on a regular basis, and that's the way I like to see a lot of the parks. Tuesday Goot's in my backyard, so I certainly take visitors there, but I'll go and just hike the little trails and walk along just on my own, just because, again, it's right there. I always learn something new. I always see something new. So I want people to think of the parks as their parks. These are national parks. They belong to everybody, but they're here in our backyard, and we should get to take advantage of them.
I love in your book, you describe the Grand Canyon. You say for the first time in your life, you can actually hear distance. And I love that because once you've been there, you can understand sort of that description. And it is hard to describe what it's like seeing it for the very first time.
Yeah, it's that's something that any writer is going to struggle with, and I've written about it so many times. Every time I do a new book or something, I have to come up with a new way to describe the Grand Canyon, but you never run out. I mean, it's always just, and I always fail. I never quite get there, but I'm always trying to think of that things because there's so many ways. It just overwhelms you. It's one of those places that are actually beyond description that you actually do have to experience to understand. To me, even when there's people around and there may be other noises or something, the silence of the canyon blots all that out. It just shuts it out because once you're gazing into that abyss and see the colors and the shadows and the formations and the shape, it just kind of, that's all you hear, that's all you see. It surrounds you, it wraps around you somehow. And yeah, it's that's one of our parks that is life altering. I mean, there's so many people that I have talked to over the years that that changed the trajectory of their life. Either they moved to Arizona because of the Grand Canyon, or they started hiking because of the Grand Canyon, or they started got a job at the Grand Canyon. Something that's one of those places that really can change who you are.
Yeah, I agree. I love taking people there for the first time.
Yeah.
I've been lucky enough to bring a couple of my friends there, and it's the first time they're seeing it. And I'm a bit of a crybaby and really emotional. So I've gotten emotional at national parks and places before because you can't really help it. So taking someone for the first time is amazing because it's like you're seeing it for the first time too, which has been so special.
Yeah, to get to see it through their eyes. That's nice.
So you say that there is a place that changed your perspective and made you see the park system in a whole new light, and that's Pipe Spring National Monument. And I have to be honest with you, I had not heard of that until I picked up this
hear
book.
that a lot. Yeah, it's a very lonely place. It's on the Arizona Strip. And this was still right after I just discovered Arizona, was out here for a year or so, was back in Ohio and, cutting yards to make money during the summer so I could come back in the fall. At that time, it was back in the 70s, pre-internet days. But I read something about Pipe Spring National Monument that made it sound like the loneliest place on the planet. And I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. So I wrote them a letter saying, can you send me a brochure? And they mailed me a pamphlet. I still have that 50-year-old pamphlet in my file somewhere. And a few weeks later, I was barreling across the Arizona Strip, and it was astonishing. I was swept back because it is nothing but horizons. It's open space. I didn't know there was land that empty, that it was overwhelming. It was wonderful. And you just keep going and going and going, and sure enough, you come out in the middle of nowhere. I had no idea you could drive this far without falling off the edge of the world, but is this little speck of a park, 40 acres, Pipe Spring National Monument. It's an old Mormon fort built atop a sacred water source there that was very important to the Kaibab Paiute people. It's in the middle of what's now the Kaibab Paiute reservation stuff. And so there was a lot of conflict, but there's so much history there. There's the Mormon history, the Paiute history, the cowboy history. A lot of the old buildings are still there. The old fort, which was never attacked, was still intact. And they tell the story very well, and it's jointly managed. The visitor center is jointly managed with the tribe and the national park, so you kind of get both sides of the story. And it's just a wonderful, quiet, peaceful little place. Again, out in the middle of nowhere. So it's worth a visit just for the drive, just for the experience that you'll have. I think it's the most remote place in Arizona that you can reach via paved road.
Wow.
So I try to get out there. I was at the Arizona Strip a couple of times this year. Anytime I don't spend part of the summer on the Arizona Strip, I feel like I'm a failure. That I need to be there. It just really draws me more and more. But what it did, how that changed my perception is because, back then, I'm 19, 20 or whatever, my idea of national parks were all Grand Canyon. They were Grand Canyon or Zion or Yellowstone or all these big, huge places. I'd been in the West. I didn't know tiny little national parks existed. This was my first experience with them, and it just opened my eyes. So after that's when I started looking into all of Arizona's smaller parks, and not just going for the scenery, because when I'm a kid, all this Western scenery just overwhelms me. It's all new. It's all brand new. I'm from Cincinnati, and here I'm mountains and canyons stuff. So I started looking at not just the scenery, but the history, and started digging into more of that, and that's what sent me to Wapatke's and Walnut Canyon and Montezuma Castle and all the other little places that I started visiting because of what the lesson that I learned at Pipe Spring and stuff, and then a few years later now I'm writing a book about them and stuff. So
You talk a lot about getting out there where it's quiet, where it's just you and nature and the stars and the sky. What does it do for you internally, mentally, to be outdoors and be outside in some of these spaces?
Well, for me, it's essential. I absolutely need to be out there. I need quiet. I need time away from people. I need time away from civilization, from society. So it helps restore me. It keeps me healthy. I'm an avid hiker. That's keeps me fit, keeps me strong. But it also nurtures me. It soothes me. I mentioned hiking down to Skeleton Point before, and that is one of my personal favorite spots, a place of power. And I've hiked there for different reasons. Usually, a lot of times just because I want to be there. But I've hiked down there when I had to grieve, and wanted to cry, after some loss in my life and stuff. And I've hiked there to celebrate, when I've had good things. For some reason, I feel connected to that place, and there are so many of the places around like that. So for me, it rejuvenates me, it restores me. It's a spiritual experience, but it's also a creative experience. I'm a writer, so I live in my head a lot, and a good portion of my day is sitting in front of a blank piece of paper or sitting at the computer or something. But I always make sure that I'm also spending time hiking. I'm out on the trail and stuff, and that's where I'm working on things. That's ideas come from and stuff. So it's a creative experience. So that's my personal journey. But I think it benefits everyone, even if you're not an avid hiker, even if you're not a backcountry person, just to be able to be quiet. Just to be able to listen to silence, to be disconnected from your devices. I think, we're so wrapped up in, our phones and our screens and everything. And I think we need that connection, because when you're in nature, you're what you smell, what you see, what you hear. To get back to those natural experiences benefits us all. It makes us better people. It makes us kinder people. It relaxes us. It slows down our heart rate. This has been proven over and over again that being in nature, has health benefits as well as, I think, spiritual and creative benefits for just about anyone. So, if all you're able to do, mobility-wise or whatever, is to just make some drives and enjoy some overlooks, and take short walks or whatever, then it's still a very worthwhile experience, because it does add a layer of calmness to your life. So these parks, we protect these parks, but these parks protect us. And again, they're just fascinating places. Once you start, you never know where the journey will take you. You find one, and you read up on all this amazing history, and you go, well, I want to learn more. And next thing you're at another park, or you're doing you're tracking it down, because it's we've got parks. One of our National Historic Trails is the Old Spanish Trail that dates back to the 1820s, and then we have the one of our most recent ones is the Butterfield Overland National Historic Trail down across southern Arizona again. And that dates back to 1858, when the old stage is the world's longest stagecoach. So driving through, all these layers of history are here for us to discover, and to me, it's just really fun. I love history, so it's fascinating to me.
And I love the tidbits of history in the book as well, which are so interesting. I mean, I feel like I learned a lot. I know people will as well. If someone is listening to this and maybe they're new to Arizona, or maybe they're like a little intimidated to even go on a hike or sort of get going, what would your advice be for someone who wants to really start exploring our national parks and monuments beyond the Grand Canyon, which is beautiful and everyone should go there, but some of the smaller ones as well?
Well, and the first thing you do is you buy my book, because it's a complete, comprehensive guide. I try to give you all the information you need, all the not only just the overview of the park and the story and the history, my personal anecdotes and experience, but also just the facts, the information, the amenities, the road conditions, the scenic drives, the hiking trails, the pet restrictions, everything. So you can just grab it and head right for the park. It's right there. But don't be intimidated. That's why I wanted to put the book out there, to welcome people into the parks more, because there's so many of these that are not. I mean, and I point out the ones, some of them are, yes, very remote, very backcountry. So we've got those experiences. But there's so many that are just accessible right there in town. They're close by. You've got rangers that will, offering guided hikes. You've got so many opportunities to visit and explore. You start out with some of the smaller parks that are maybe based on some of the ruins, like Casa Grande Ruins National Monuments. Is a spectacular dwelling. It's just right out the back door of the visitor center. And the staff offers the guided walks, but you can go around and see. They've got a wonderful museum, artifacts, and so forth. So you start off small. You make a discovery. You read some of the signage. You learn a little bit about it, and all of a sudden, I think most people are curious about this stuff. And it's one thing to read about some history. It's another thing to be right there in the history, to be right there to see. This building, this old house of mud was built, 700 years ago. And to see how these people lived and stuff is just fascinating. And the same with the scenic parks. Even some of the larger ones, like Petrified Forest, is spectacular. And you can see it in so many ways. They've got a long scenic drive, 28 miles from north to south. And if all you do is drive through it, stop at some overlooks, enjoy the views, that's wonderful. Experience it like that if you want. They've got a lot of great little short hikes that, half a mile or third mile. They've got little paved trails for some of them. So it's really easy for people like that. One of my favorite things to do is sometimes I'm just driving. If I'm heading that way I'll just get off the interstate, because right off of I-40 is the north entrance of Petrified Forest, and that's the Painted Desert section of the park. And you can just pull into the park, and right away you can hike down into the Painted Desert. They've got it's kind of all open. They don't have trails, but you're looking up you're gazing up at the rim there, so you don't get lost. And I like to hike down there, eat a sandwich, hike back up to my car, and continue on my drive and stuff. That's my lunch break. And rather than sit in a restaurant somewhere for an hour, I sit out amidst these hills that are these beautiful fiery hills that are kind of colored like blood and peaches. And it's just remarkable, again, to have that bit of quiet and to see all this, how the earth shapes us, things. I like places that sort of upend our perception of beauty. Sometimes, like I love Sunset Crater volcano,
Yeah.
national monument. But it's very stark. It's a lot of black cinders and twisted rock formations, but it is very otherworldly and haunting. The same with the Painted Desert, the same with Chiricahua, just like you mentioned, So there's just so many ways to perceive beauty, and the more you look at it, the more you gaze at it, the more you understand that it's all beautiful. It doesn't have to just be, the Grand Canyon. It can be, the Grand Canyon can be frightening, and intimidating and some. And then you go to Canyon de Chelly, which is another big canyon, and it's so pastoral. It's so peaceful. And there are horses grazing down in this green bottom, and you see gardens from the Navajo families living down there and flowers. And here's two different canyon experiences, and they're both spectacular and stunning. And I like to see them all.
Yeah. I don't have the power to do this, but if I did, I would name you the official spokesperson for the state of Arizona.
Well, get the power. See what forms you have to fill out. See who you need to contact. Get the power, and then let's get the process started.
We will work on that. If people are listening, where is going to be the best place for them to find the book?
Well, they're in most of the stores now. The book came out on November 1st, so it's in Barnes & Noble, most of the local stores. You can buy them on Amazon. You can also visit my website, which is rogernaylor.com, and purchase them there. And any book purchased through my website, I sign.
Oh, cool.
And keep an eye peeled. Because I'm giving presentations all over the state. I'm on my book tour now, especially right after the first of the year when I'll be doing a lot of them. So I give talks and with slideshows about the books, and answer questions about Arizona travel, and then sell and sign books as well and stuff. So you can find that again on my website, or sign up. I have a monthly newsletter that goes out, and you can sign up on my website there and receive all the news and updates and where I'm eating, where I'm hiking, because I like to hike, but I like to eat in Arizona too.
And I would say also follow Roger on Facebook, because I think that's how I originally found you, and you post such great photos and such beautiful photos.
Thank you.
That's also really
nice.
helpful. So Roger, thank you so much for joining us.
A treat, as always.
We'll
Wonderful to see you.
The next time the next time you release a book, by then you'll be the official spokesperson.
Okay.
So we'll work on that, and
that.
we'll do that for the next time.
Perfect.
So thank you so much.
My pleasure.